that proverbial line about he's got a snowball's chance in hell of having a career in that town one time to my mom.
At 80, Sam Elliott just dropped a bombshell that's sending shockwaves through Hollywood. In a rare, no-holds-barred revelation, the legendary actor named 6 peers he openly admits he hated. Fans never expected this level of honesty from the man known for his calm, gravelly voice and cowboy charm. From bitter on-set clashes to personal grievances, Elliott spares no detail in exposing the darker side of Tinseltown. Ashton Kutcher. For Sam Elliott, acting was never a brand exercise. It wasn't a ladder climbed through charm, visibility, or strategic friendships. It was a discipline, something learned slowly, sharpened through failure, humility, and emotional risk. You showed up prepared, you listened more than you spoke, and you let restraint do the heavy lifting. Fame, in Sam's view, was incidental. If it arrived, it meant nothing unless there was substance underneath it. Without that foundation, success wasn't growth. It was noise. That philosophy is why Ashton Kutcher's rapid rise unsettled him. Kutcher didn't come up through the grind Sam respected. He exploded into visibility through sitcom success, romantic comedies, and an affable persona that translated easily across media. Then came the business ventures, the tech investments, the carefully curated public image. To Sam, it didn't look like evolution. It looked like dilution. He saw an industry rewarding likability over rigor, exposure over depth, and momentum over mastery. In Sam's mind, Kutcher symbolized a generational shift he found troubling, one where acting became adjacent to influence rather than rooted in craft. The work seemed secondary to the ecosystem around it: publicity cycles, audience metrics, brand alignment. Sam didn't hate Kutcher for this. What unsettled him was what Kutcher represented: a Hollywood increasingly shaped by algorithms and optics instead of discipline and truth. Despite those feelings, Sam never let philosophy interfere with professionalism. When they worked together on the ranch, he showed up exactly as he always had: prepared, focused, serious. He delivered his performance with the same gravity and commitment he brought to every role, regardless of genre or co-star. There were no tantrums, no public friction, no unprofessional behavior. On camera, the chemistry worked, the show succeeded, audiences responded. Off camera, however, the disconnect was unmistakable. Crew members noticed it immediately. Conversations between the two men were cordial but careful, polite yet distant. There was no warmth, no creative kinship, no sense of shared language about the work itself. Sam reportedly described Kutcher as kind and respectful, but fundamentally untrained, someone performing the idea of acting rather than practicing the craft in its traditional sense. To Sam, there was a difference between being comfortable on camera and understanding what the camera demanded. The tension wasn't about ego, it wasn't about jealousy or hierarchy. It was philosophical. Sam believed acting required surrender, the willingness to disappear into something larger than yourself. What he saw instead was an industry encouraging performers to remain visible at all times, to protect their image rather than risk it. Kutcher, in Sam's private assessments, stood at the center of that shift. Benedict Cumberbatch. When Sam Elliott went after the power of the dog, he didn't circle the issue or soften his language. He went straight to the core of what bothered him, and he did it in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. His criticism wasn't framed as polite disagreement or academic debate. It was visceral, emotional, and deeply personal. To Sam, the film didn't merely reinterpret the Western tradition. It violated it. And at the center of that violation, in his eyes, stood Benedict Cumberbatch. Sam made it clear that his frustration went far beyond tone or pacing. He felt the film misunderstood the very soul of the West. During a widely discussed podcast appearance, he openly mocked Cumberbatch's performance, taking aim at the accent, the posture, and the physical presence. He questioned the believability of the portrayal, suggesting it felt studied rather than lived. To Sam, the performance carried an air of self-consciousness, as if the character was being analyzed rather than inhabited. He saw delicacy where he expected hardness, and affectation where he expected instinct. The comment that ignited the most backlash was also the most blunt. Sam openly questioned how a British actor could convincingly embody the American West, not as a matter of nationality alone, but of lived cultural understanding. The remark detonated across social media almost instantly. Supporters of the film accused him of gatekeeping, of clinging to outdated ideas about masculinity and genre, and of refusing to accept modern psychological reinterpretations of Western characters. To many, the power of the dog was praised precisely for dismantling traditional cowboy mythologies. To Sam, that dismantling crossed into distortion. What critics often missed was that Sam wasn't rejecting complexity or vulnerability. He believed the film confused fragility with depth and symbolism with truth. In his view, the Western wasn't meant to be dissected like an art installation. It was built on restraint, silence, and moral code, not on overt metaphor or performative introspection. Sam felt the film replaced the quiet gravity of Western masculinity with something theatrical and deliberately unsettling, mistaking discomfort for authenticity. Importantly, Sam never backed down. As the backlash intensified, he didn't issue clarifications or apologies. He didn't reframe his words to appease critics. He stood exactly where he had planted himself, insisting that his criticism wasn't personal malice, but cultural defense. To him, the Western genre was already fragile, its foundations worn thin by reinvention and trend-chasing. What angered him wasn't one performance, but what it represented, a slow hollowing out of a tradition he had spent a lifetime honoring. Jared Leto nothing irritated Sam Elliot more than acting that announced itself. To him, the highest compliment a performance could receive was that the audience forgot there was an actor involved at all. The work should disappear into the character, not parade its process in front of cameras and headlines. That belief put him squarely at odds with Jared Leto's reputation for extreme method behavior, which Sam viewed not as commitment, but as distraction. The stories alone were enough to sour him. The refusal to break character, the bizarre on-set gifts, the insistence on carrying psychological intensity off-camera and into real space. None of it read as discipline to Sam. It read as noise. He saw the behavior as performative in the worst way, theater designed for publicity rather than a sincere pursuit of truth. To him, if the audience needed to hear about how hard someone worked, then the work itself wasn't doing its job. In private, Sam was reportedly ruthless in his assessment. He questioned the entire premise of extreme method acting, suggesting that if a role required such elaborate rituals and endurance tests, then something fundamental might be missing. For Sam, craft meant control. It meant knowing how to enter and exit a role without collateral damage. Suffering was not proof of authenticity. Restraint was. What bothered him most wasn't just the behavior, but what it symbolized. Sam believed Hollywood had begun to reward spectacle over substance, turning the process of acting into a form of entertainment itself. Behind-the-scenes antics became marketing tools, and dedication was measured by how extreme the story sounded in interviews. In that environment, Leto's approach felt less like immersion and more like strategy. Though the two never worked together, industry whispers suggested Sam quietly exited a project once Leto became attached. There was no confrontation, no press statement, no attempt to frame it as creative differences. Sam simply stepped away. For him, the decision required no explanation. The line was clear. Jeff Bridges. There was a time when Sam Elliot and Jeff Bridges felt like two expressions of the same philosophy. Neither relied on volume or theatrical force. Both trusted presence over performance, stillness over spectacle. They shared a belief that acting worked best when it disappeared, when the audience felt the character before noticing the craft behind it. Their collaboration on The Big Lebowski reflected that harmony. On screen, the chemistry was effortless. Off-screen, the respect was real. Conversations were easy, unforced, built on a mutual understanding that the work should always speak louder than the actor. In those years, Sam saw Jeff as someone grounded in the same tradition, an actor uninterested in chasing trends or selling an image. There was a looseness to Bridges then, a lack of calculation Sam admired deeply. Fame existed, but it didn't seem to steer the choices. The craft came first. Over time, however, Sam sensed a shift. It wasn't abrupt, and it wasn't announced. It revealed itself slowly, in small changes that accumulated. After Bridges' Oscar win, the tone felt different. Public appearances became more polished. Language felt more measured, more aware of audience and message. Access narrowed. Where there had once been openness, there was now distance. To Sam, the grounded simplicity he had respected seemed replaced by curation. Sam never confronted Jeff publicly, and he never accused him directly. He didn't need to. In one interview, when asked about long careers and relationships, Sam offered a single-pointed line, that some people don't change. They simply reveal who they always were. The comment passed quietly at first, but those familiar with the history understood its weight. Many took it as aimed squarely at Bridges, a reflection of disappointment rather than bitterness. After that, the crossing of paths stopped. No shared projects, no festival moments, no public gestures of support. The separation wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no feuds, no sharp words, no statements to correct. It was simply permanent. Two actors who once shared a philosophy now moved in different orbits, no longer aligned. Kevin Costner's Sam Elliot didn't stumble into authenticity. He forged it slowly, the hard way, through years of roles that demanded restraint rather than spectacle, and through a personal reverence for the people who actually lived the lives he portrayed. To Sam, authenticity wasn't something you put on with a costume designer standing nearby. It was something that came from posture, silence, and the unspoken understanding of labor. Cowboys, in his eyes, weren't cinematic archetypes. They were men shaped by weather, routine, and endurance. His performances carried weight because they felt inhabited, as if the dust had settled into his bones rather than onto a wardrobe rack. That deep-rooted philosophy is what made Kevin Costner's rise as a modern screen cowboy so unimpressive to him. When Costner stepped into Wyatt Earp and later became the defining face of Yellowstone, Sam didn't see a continuation of the Western tradition he respected. He saw refinement where he expected abrasion. The boots looked too new. The movements felt studied. The environments appeared staged, carefully framed to look rugged without ever feeling unforgiving. To Sam, it all felt engineered, a version of the West filtered through lighting rigs and prestige television gloss. Sam was known to bristle at what he perceived as Costner's rancher persona, once likening it to playing dress-up rather than living the part. In his view, there was a difference between wearing the image of a cowboy and understanding the cost of that life. The West, he knew, wasn't eloquent or cinematic. It was quiet, repetitive, and often brutal in its simplicity. It involved mornings before sunrise, hands cut by wire, and animals that demanded respect rather than admiration. None of that, Sam felt, truly lived at the core of Costner's performances. While audiences embraced Yellowstone for its sweeping landscapes, operatic conflicts, and larger-than-life drama, Sam saw something hollow beneath the surface. To him, the show transformed a way of life into a fantasy, something consumable, stylish, and emotionally heightened for viewers far removed from the realities it claimed to depict. He believed it reduced the Western ethos to a glossy souvenir, more about dominance and spectacle than quiet moral code. The genre, in his mind, was never meant to shout. When rumors surfaced that Sam Elliot might appear on Yellowstone, he shut them down almost immediately. Those close to him said the dismissal wasn't about scheduling or money. It was about principle. He reportedly brushed the idea aside as melodrama disguised in cowboy clothing, a project that misunderstood what the Western was meant to communicate. For Sam, this wasn't stubbornness. It was fidelity, loyalty to a tradition he believed had already been diluted too many times. To Nicolas Cage. Sam Elliot built his reputation as much on what he refused to do as on what he delivered. He didn't overplay emotion. He didn't dominate scenes by force. He trusted stillness, timing, and silence to carry meaning. His performances were shaped by control, not stiffness, but discipline. He believed the strongest moments in acting often arrived when an actor pulled back instead of pushing forward. That belief became the lens through which he judged everyone else. It's why Nicolas Cage's style never resonated with him. Where many viewers and critics admired Cage for his daring unpredictability, Sam saw excess. Cage's performances often exploded outward, sudden shifts in tone, volume, and intensity that demanded attention. To Sam, those moments felt less like revelation and more like disruption. He believed acting should serve the scene, not overwhelm it. In Cage's most extreme performances, Sam felt the balance tipped too far toward spectacle, turning emotion into noise. Their time working together on Ghost Rider underscored that divide. On set, Sam was professional, courteous, and efficient, as he always was. There were no confrontations, no visible tension, no behind-the-scenes drama. But there was distance. Sam kept his space, both physically and creatively. He focused on his own work and avoided engaging with Cage's process. Crew members sensed the separation immediately. Two radically different philosophies coexisting without overlap. Later, when Sam spoke in general terms about actors who dominate frames through sheer force of personality, those close to him knew exactly who he meant. He never needed to name names. The description was precise enough. He believed some performers mistook intensity for depth, volume for truth. Cage, in Sam's private view, embodied that confusion. What others called fearless, Sam interpreted as uncontrolled. At one point, Sam reportedly summed up his feeling in a blunt phrase: "All flash, no warmth." To him, Cage's performances often lacked the quiet humanity that made characters feel lived in. The emotions were loud, but the connection felt distant. Sam didn't deny Cage's commitment or risk-taking. He questioned the payoff. If an audience remembered the performance but not the person inside it, Sam felt something had gone wrong. What do you think about the actors that Sam Elliot hates? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.